Yeah, so hi, my name is Adrian Burke. I was joining Sarah on the data librarian team under Vanessa Raymond. And essentially what we were doing was supporting people at ACEP regarding data stewardship and data management. And as Sarah said, this is a really important part for the research process. Researchers need to be able to find data that they might want to reuse in their projects, and they need to be able to publish that data to an inventory or repository so that other people can find it. So the goals that we set out for and that I set out for were to improve our data inventory process, to connect with researchers and interns in order to make it easier for them to submit their data to our internal data inventory and to find the data they need, and also to educate ACEPers as well as high school students on data stewardship in order to facilitate like a culture of being responsible with how we manage our data. And there are a few reasons why this is so important for a research institution. So ACEP is growing, and the amount of research we're doing is growing. And it's very important to approach this in an organized manner with the data that we have. There are a lot of opportunities to reuse data in order to address the problems we face, like the current climate crisis. And it's not a good idea to waste any resources in doing that. And there are also issues like indigenous data and the privacy concerns around that. Indigenous groups are developing their own guidelines for how to manage data that might be private to communities. And that's another thing that's really important. So the first thing that we did, me and Sarah, to address these goals is we redesigned the intake form for the data inventory, and we had a process of testing and refining it. We threw that 1-week data hackathon event, which we met with interns and researchers and met with them to intake data into our inventory and to test out our forms. And we also developed a sheet, like a guide for people for ways that they can help to manage their data better and why it's important. And throughout that data hackathon, we brought the number of data sets in our inventory up to 288. And you can see some more statistics about our inventory. That might seem impressive, and it actually is impressive. We did achieve a lot, but we still suspect that it's only like a fraction of all the data that's out there that we've conducted at ACEP or that we plan to conduct in the future. So there still is a lot of work to be done on improving that inventory further. Then one of my projects that was to develop a mini lesson curriculum for teaching through technology high school students. And part of this curriculum, in addition to education, was an interactive activity, which was the card game that Sarah mentioned. And in this card game, players play the role of a researcher, and they have to find scientific data and tag it with metadata, and then use that metadata that's been created in order to find the data that they need to conduct their own research. And so it's sort of an environment of collaboration between researchers where winning is enabled by practicing data stewardship. And through this education of high school students, we hope that some of them will grow up to become researchers in their career, and they'll be able to bring these practices into their professional career and into research as a whole. And then a project that I set out on alone was to create a data-driven microgrid game. So essentially what this is it's a prototype for a game where the player would be serving as a microgrid manager in a rural Alaskan community, and they would be able to take on that role and make decisions based on the data that they gather from the community. So there's sort of a gameplay loop of identifying what a community's needs are, then building energy infrastructure to address those needs, and then reflecting on how that impacted the community and what needs to be done next. And I think this will sort of help to build empathy for the decision makers who are making decisions based on the data that researchers collect, and why that's having good data is very important to the process of developing microgrids. So there are a few things that I learned throughout this whole process. One of them is that engaging empathy of people by having them play the role of another person or see it from another person's view is a very effective way of conveying the messages that we want to. So like in the microgrid game, when they have to play the role of an energy decision maker, or in the card game where they play the role of a researcher, it's a really effective way of conveying that message. Another thing is these sort of soft methods of teaching data stewardship, like the games, or just meeting with people in person, connecting with them, the other people at ACEP, giving them free food. They're actually really effective at getting people to listen to our message and to want to actually learn about data stewardship and what they can do to help. And a final thing that I learned that I actually practiced, that Vanessa helped me with a lot, is applying these data management practices that I was advocating for to my own work. So the video game prototype that I created, the card game, and the T3 mini lesson all have their own GitHub repositories with READMEs and licenses so that people can access them online and they can reuse them and they can understand how to use them because there's documentation that goes with them. I think that was a pretty big success. So in summary, we worked to expand the data inventory. We improved the process for getting data in and for helping people to find the data they need. We created guidelines for researchers at ACEP on how to deal with data and connected with them on a personal level to foster a culture of data stewardship at ACEP. And that extends also to my efforts for high school education in order to create future data stewards. So thank you for your time. Are there any questions? You in the back. Like the data inventory, or oh, okay. So the question is, what would I envision for the data inventory to look like in the future? Right now, there's actually, as Sarah mentioned, there's no standard for how we metadata tag scientific data. So like we have fields like the subject matter expert, people who can talk about that data, who you can ask about it. A lot of repositories in other institutions might not have something like that. So I think it would be really cool if, and that's something we worked on, finding better ways to describe the research data sets with metadata, describing the type of data that's in there. Our tags are not necessarily the most intuitive and searchable, and we have really good opportunities right now to update those sorts of things before we have thousands of data sets that we need to update. Kathy?
Was your first idea?
So Kathy's asking if the first idea for our card game was a success or if we had to go through many iterations, and it was definitely a very iterative process. We had this vision and had no idea. We had this vision of people acting as researchers and participating in building a data inventory, and we had no idea how to gamify that. So we really went through like at least 5 prototypes of different cards. It started out as a collaborative game, like everyone's on the same team, and it's kind of still is, but now the researchers have their own individual interests and they like get points for collaborating and for completing their own research. And it's actually like a really interesting game where we've seen emergent strategies in the playtesting we conducted. Yes.
Where can we play the game?
The card game?
Yeah.
There are 2 decks in Vanessa's office that you are welcome to play with as long as you return them. There's a GitHub repository that I should probably send out a link for that has the directions on how to play. And it also has a PDF of the cards if you happen to want to print your own deck of cards.
I think all the time we have for questions.